sales at Vilamoura World, and we are also a proud member of the Irish network. First of all, let me tell a little bit more about me. I'm 45. I'm a Portuguese national. I'm married and the father of a beautiful girl and a very stubborn boy, and a religious Benfica fan. I've been, in terms of my background, I've been having an international career related to real estate, also some experience in the public sector, mainly in Spain and also in Brazil lately, and now here in Vilamoura. So my proposal today to you is kind of talk to you about a little bit of futurology, because it will all depend on how people behave and how things evolve. And this is something that happens almost every week. We have different news, so we have to rethink on how things will actually be. But I will humbly take a shot on what I believe things will be more likely in the property market. And of course, after that, I will be more than happy to hear your feedbacks, your questions, and your comments, if any. So what we are proposing here a little bit is to talk to you, and undoubtedly we have to start with the what brings us here and what brought us here, without asking permission to anybody, and something that seemed very, very far away. Suddenly it became massive and at a speed of contagious that no one could ever predict. And the truth is, and let me just make a little bit of a reflection here that does not go directly into the real estate issue here, but it does in the end, because it affects, is that COVID-19 has really shown how vulnerable humankind is, and how, in fact, there will be a before and after COVID. In fact, what we're seeing now is that internationally, we did not see a global leader. We have seen more types of nationalisms coming in, people looking more towards inside their own problems, and we for sure did not find a common fight against COVID. So we're seeing Europe struggling to find a common base to react to what's coming. The United States, as well, as we know, and all of the Asian countries also with different types of approaches. So one of the things that we will see, and this comes a little bit into what I want to talk to you later on more on real estate, is that we're kind of seeing a principle of a deglobalization of the world, meaning that probably traveling will be much less than it is now. Probably it will be much more expensive due to the distances that we need to have. Shared economy, as for example, using all the shared economy, using a Uber, using the shared bikes and all of that, will probably need to be approached as well in a different way, because people will be wary of touching where other people have touched before. So when we see that, it is important to understand that after COVID, we will have for sure a different way of people they will behave, and definitely we will have a different economy. Just to start off as well, and before we move on to the rest of the presentation also, there has been a lot of discussion regarding real estate on how the sectors will react. So for the COVID, one thing that we've seen so far is that residential and food-related retail will become more consolidated after this, because it's some couple of sectors that people will still need to consume. It is important to say, in terms of the other retail, it will really be important to understand how people will behave, because when we think about how are we going to purchase clothes in the future, how are we going to touch things, it will for sure bring in opportunities of e-commerce, opportunities of last mile deliveries, and that's all going to come in the in the way we will develop real estate in the future. Also, another point that I wanted to say is that because of the coronavirus, we have adapted tremendously fast with technology. So we all saw the joke that was going all around from what drives your technology changes. So it was the CEO, the COO, or the COVID. So in the end, everybody put the COVID, because we really had to adapt much faster and come out with technology solutions to keep people working in a remote way. So all of these issues will now unfold into many main issues that I will be talking to you about, but in fact, they are all real estate related. And the first one I want to bring here is that we are the answer. We've seen, as I've mentioned to you before, that we were not able, as in global manner, in global fashion, our political leaders, our global organizations. In fact, COVID came, everybody decided and reacted in different ways. But in the end of the day, it's going to be us humankind, that will have to react and come up with the final solution. And this is very, very important as we look into real estate and understanding this. It is something that probably would seem like a la police truth. Like, of course, it has to be that way, but it's not often the way it is. And what we will see from now on is that humans, persons, us, we will be the first protagonists of real estate. So far, we've been driven as developers, as agents, as even public sector licensing part. All of the stakeholders gathering around real estate. We've been looking too much into our own business, into our own urbanism solutions that we believe that will be what they have to suit people. But many times, in fact, we have forgotten the purpose. We have forgotten, what are we developing this project for? Are we maximizing our profit? Are we maximizing our square meters? Are we developing retail on the ground floor because it's the way it comes in the urban plan? Are we developing a 1-bedroom or a 2 or 3-bedroom? Why and to whom are we developing? And for sure, because we are now seeing the openness of use of our residential area, meaning that now the way we purchase a house will change dramatically. It will change dramatically because we will not buy only in function of the number of bedrooms, in function of if it has a garden or if it has a terrace, but now we are including remote work. Now our homes have become our offices. Now we will have to use those spaces according to the time of the day, according to the needs that we have, into a flexible, modular space. So definitely this will change the way, and for sure we'll have to build, because we will not build anymore thinking on it's going to be for a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom. We will bid for sure in terms of the purpose of use. And that will be a massive difference in terms of how we can think cities and how we actually program our new developments. For sure, the protagonism of people buying is a tendency that is already arrived and that we have already to be working on it in order to have and bring those answers to the community. It is very, very important to say that this way of doing real estate has for sure a before and after again in terms of how we will deal with this. I'm sure that now everybody's at their homes confined and no one is talking about what new car am I going to get? What clothes am I going to wear in the summer? People are thinking about two things mainly: hairdressing and real estate. No one told us when we had to be confined that we had to get a haircut before. And now we really see the importance of that, and ladies that need their coloring their hairs, that's the conversation on the top of the table. And the second one is, why did we close our terrace? If we had our terrace open now, we would have more space. We could go outside and breathe fresh air. And people did that because they had some decisions to make, economic decisions, but also household decisions, saying, I need a 2-bedroom, but I want to live in the center, but I cannot do that, so I have to go more into the periphery. And so it comes with a terrace that, in fact, people think, well, I will sacrifice that because I need space. And this is something that will come by the time we are actually seeing this tripod of views of homes, meaning residential needs, leisure, and remote work. This will come into people's mind thinking, why would I have to live in a city? Why would I have to live in a periphery and take 1-hour commute or 2-hour commute when I could be in a lower dense place with cheaper real estate and bigger homes? We've seen during this confinement, pretty much all over the world, that people who had second homes or had their parents in smaller villages, they immediately rushed into the interior lands, or in the case of Portugal, into the Algarve as well, to their farms, etc. And suddenly, they are in these places where nothing happens, and they're able to do their life. They're able to work from a distance, but at the same time, they can look at quality of life. They can look at being able going outside and enjoying the fresh air. So people are starting to think about what's the balance in terms of quality of life and how technology is really coming into helping us out to live in more remote areas where I can work at a distance, but at the same time, I have a better quality of life. And the better quality of life, if we would go around, and maybe we can do that later, is based on how we spend our time, how we dedicate our time to what we actually like to do. If you live in the city and you have a 1-hour or 2-hour commute, those 2 or 4 hours per day, they are dedicated of time of your life that you're not doing sports, that you're not enjoying time with your family, that you're not having a different leisure moment that you would like, or even that you could probably do that extra mile work that you needed to, but you can't because otherwise you'll be arriving too late at home. So the way we see time and our perception of time is very, very important in the way that we will in the future choose where we want to live. We will definitely look at how we measure our quality of life in terms on the time that we spend doing different things. And again, when we bring that into real estate, is that probably we will take the moment to see that if I don't have to commute, if I don't have to go into a certain office and take public transportation, if I have my office space at home, I can easily change from one use to another and still have time to dedicate to the other things that I like to do. It is crucial that we understand that we have now to think and reflect how our decisions in terms on how we decide to live will impact the choices on where and what type of residence we want to have. Because it is the moment where, and remember that I said in the beginning, humans will be the protagonists. It's time that we'll probably come back to basics and understand what is really important in our lives. We have for sure to have the income. We have for sure to be able to work and fulfill our ambitions professionally, but we also have to have time to what matters as well. So the way we will organize our spaces in the future will be much more open into inviting people over, as we will have some restrictions in restaurants, as we will have some restrictions in the way people may go from one point to the other. So what we will probably see in the future is that we will have more gatherings of families in our own homes. And that will, of course, affect the way we organize our places, because we don't want to have large spaces that we don't use most of the time, but then in certain moments we will have, well, we want to have those spaces. And again, that's where modular, flexible spaces and solutions will have to come. And this impacts the way we, in fact, look on the materials that we will build in the future, that the way we will, in fact, organize our spaces. It is important as well to say that this is something that will have to come, and will need to have an effort from also the public sector in understanding how all of these uses, if they are coming to be more flexible, they can be in the same spaces. I'm thinking about co-working areas, I'm thinking about student residences areas, and even third home. Because of this confinement, this modularity will be so important in terms of finding spaces that they can enlarge and they can be smaller according to those needs. Also, one of the things that will be and will come as a big importance is the way we are connected. We've been talking about remote working will not be able to happen, and I'm sure that we all been a little bit frustrated in how our internet is slow at home, how we can sometimes it takes time to load things and open emails and all of that. And it is very important that on the basis of this new way of thinking real estate is connectivity. And this connectivity unfolds in many different ways. One of them is services. the Internet of Things. We will consume online. We are now used to do our shopping, our grocery online. We are, for sure, clothes, we will want them to arrive directly from the warehouse where no one else has touched before. We will order, because of what I mentioned in the previous slide, we will have a lot of more smaller gatherings at home. We will order food home. So maybe our homes, if it's a building on the 7th floor, we will have drone pads where our takeaway is being delivered, and it lands in this pad. We pay with our mobile phone, we get the pizzas out, and we have a pizza dinner with friends and family. Connectivity will bring us the opportunity and the business of, maybe we could give you the image of the Netflix of residential. People will want to consume their own products from home at the time and moment they choose. Again, people-centered, not anymore saying that if you want to have something, you have to go downstairs, cross the road, and go and pick it up somewhere else. This will be people-centered, and it will come as the new generation of residential design. One of the things also that it's very important regarding connectivity is that, and if we think about not only cities, but now we bring the low density opportunity of living somewhere farther away from the cities. It's also how we can be environmentally sustainable. The way we will, for example, generate electricity. Probably we will have an immense advancement in technology. It exists already, but in the way we can actually, especially in villages, how we can self-generate energy, how we can be self-sustainable, because we will for sure consume more electricity, because we will be more connected to different gadgets, we will be more connected to internet, we will have to develop our activity from home. And so the way we not only build, but the way that everything that goes around living has come to a moment where we have to integrate all of these things. Because if we don't have also this environmental self-generation, energy efficient measures, then connectivity will not be affordable. Then connectivity will not allow people to live outside of big cities and still work at the same time. So one of the things that we will see and people will decide is on where they want to live or where they can live, is one of the main questions that they do not appear for sure in any query. If we go and ask all the agents, is people asking about the broadband. Now people will ask, what's the broadband here? Is it fiber? Does it work well? So these concepts of smart cities, we will have to apply them as well to smart villages. It will have to come as an opportunity that brings all of the things that I've mentioned before, because they bring us the sense of time. They bring us the low density in construction that gives us the sense of quality of life. And because we have all of this, we can actually have a flexible living, meaning we are actually going to be part of something that it's not anymore so much decided on a 9 to 5 way of living, but I can decide that I can probably live through some periods of time in Ireland, in Dublin, and another periods of time in Vilamoura. Because flights are going to be more expensive, because people will probably tend to spend more time at the specific space instead of moving from point A to B constantly. We'll probably be coming back to some basics, but using technology. But at the same time, the way we look at life, it will for sure be more flexible. And it will for sure be more flexible in terms of the decisions that we make. We will not see closed-gated communities where we will see people with swimming pools inside and barbecues, people that they privatize their lives. I don't think we will see that. We saw that a lot in the United States, in many Latin American countries. They have, because of security issues, people have brought all of those services inside. I don't think we will see that here in Europe and in the future, because it does not come to our cultural way. But for sure, we will see people looking more at the way they live and, for example, taking a decision on, in the next few moments, in the next few years, preferring to coming and be at their own villa for a longer period of time, 2 to 3 months, where before they would probably come for 15 days, where you decide to have your holidays in a different place, and then you continue working at that same place. So the way we look at things will for sure be much more flexible, and for sure it will come in as a way to change what we think about and what type of products we will develop for people. I will just finish with a very brief note on what we're doing in Vilamoura. We've developed, in fact, thinking already, but of course I'm not going to say that this was thought out for the COVID. It was not, but in fact, the way we've developed Central, it has come out, and it really, it is not the full answer, but as some already answers to what we talk about, flexibility and use of space, where we have an internal courtyard, where we have a multi-purpose area that you can use as your office, that you can use as a leisure moments. And so this is a little bit of the modularity, of the flexibility of spaces that I was talking to you about, where it vastly becomes a leisure area with the kitchen and all of that, and at the same time it becomes also for an opportunity to watch a movie, and just upstairs an office. So I think this is the kind of spaces and modularity that we will see more and more in the future. The other one is Uptown, where we've thought on many outdoor areas where we can actually have your leisure time, but also, again, you see on the right-hand side picture how we've thought on the way people will develop their own decoration, and the use of space will be, in this sense, integrated. So we have come into a mindset of that we are searching for a balance of life, an equilibrium between our private life and our professional life and our family life. And we are evolving into a concept of integrating all of these, and they will have to live together at the same space. So we here in Uptown, we have thought on also common areas, many outside areas, but also a specific place where you can develop and work. I'm sure that many things will come back, but this were following our discussion here. But I'm basically the 3 main messages that I would like to take away is that already in place, there has to be a change in the way we see real estate, with purchasers, with people being the protagonists. We will see a hybrid use of the residential area with a tripod use of residential needs, leisure needs, and the remote working needs, and also the sustainable, environmentally sustainable measures that we have to take to provide that connectivity that will allow us, in fact, to implement these changes. I really thank you for your time and for watching, and I hope it has been interesting. And now I will be available for any Q&As and comments and a fruitful discussion of what I've just presented. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miguel. So lots of great, you know, thing and food for thought. Maybe I'll start with a question. Is you know, in what you presented today, we know that people are more demanding, and they know, you know, the idea of having their home is residential and leisure and working. So we know that those demands are going to be more important. But what about the offer? I mean, obviously you have your two projects that you've just mentioned now, the Uptown and the central developments. But is there enough offer for this new kind of demand from the market?
Arnold, for sure, this is something very new, and we will see two ways of reaction to this. The first one is the existing spaces, and those we will see, as if you remember, and it has been here in Portugal at least, you would see during the 80s and the 90s, what we call here the marquise, which is closing the terraces. And people did that because they needed that space. So what we will see now is that we will see people adapting the existing areas into those new spaces. Also, when I mentioned public sector and the way we think urbanism in the short term, one of the things, and again, I will be using, of course, the examples we have here in Portugal, but many of the times we had on the ground floors of the buildings in the cities a use of a retail of 200 square meters, 250 square meters that we often see they're empty. And this use will probably be suitable for someone who has not a capacity of mobility capacity, so we can use those instead of being forcibly of a retail area. We can use those areas to adapt to these new ways of thinking and occupy them instead of just having empty retail areas that are not viable financially, and we will not have an occupier for that. And then on a larger scale in the future, the projects that some of them have already, that are built, and we cannot do anything about it. But I think the main difference will come, in fact, in how and what materials we will be using to be able to ensure this flexibility and the flexibility and the modularization of this. This comes along with something that is very, very important for us here in Vilamoura, which is personalization. We have to find answers to what people want to buy. The way we sell, it's going to be a lot more online. And so we will, in fact, look a little bit more as a kind of gamification on the way we sell, because we will ask people, what do you want? We will ask people, what color of sofa would you prefer? In terms of our, as you saw in central of our multi-purpose area, what would you want this area to be? So this will be in the future. So there will be a short term where we will see some reforms in the existing areas. Maybe we will see a lot less marquees and more open terraces. And in the future, all of this will have to come into account when we develop new projects.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
It's Christina here. If I can ask a question, please, Miguel. I was interested, you started with talking about the future of retail and you've touched on that there also. What's the feeling from your team on the future of shopping centres and larger retail? And also, what are the opportunities there in the context of sustainable communities and reuse of that property, which is often very centrally located for alternative uses?
I think you've touched a very, very important point, and it comes really into the way and to the last one of the last slides I was talking to you about flexible living, and it has to come also in the way we will want to shop. I think the shared economy will have its pains in the moments until we find a vaccine and we understand a little bit more on what's going on. So these retail areas will become firstly more of a leisure areas where people and showroom areas where people will probably see physically the product, but they will not even try it, but they will actually see it. So what we'll see is a growth of the last mile opportunities. So also some kind of these stores on the ground floor that are not used now, or many, unfortunately, we will see many businesses going down, and they will be replaced for this Amazon type of companies coming in and occupying those spaces in order to be closer to people and being able to have a delivery in short term. So these retail areas, they will have to be human dedicated in terms on. I really see an opportunity on touching the extremes, and when I say this is I see the opportunity on how we can actually mix students and elderly people. These spaces are in fact the opportunity where we can create flexible and modular areas where these can kind of live together. They're different dynamics, but some of the needs are very much the same. And these shopping centers and retail areas are central, as you mentioned, and they are easy to access. So we will have an opportunity to give these spaces to the community in terms on how we can find ways of acknowledging and organizing them so we can have these people that are in the starting age of university students, and then also the elderly. I think that's a place where we will see these spaces living together. And one of the things that for sure we will have to understand, and our public sector licensing also, is that nowadays you have residential use, you have retail use, industrial use, and probably what we'll see now is that everything will be more of a flexible use, where you will have actually to find ways where you have different audiences at the same time, and you can adapt that to them as well. In terms of the way we will be shopping, I think it will happen differently in many different countries, because culturally also the behaviors are different. But I would say that in the next couple of years, the online is gonna explode, and people will be not very tranquil in terms of touching clothes or other objects that other people may have touched. So I would think that we will have to give that use into more of a community oriented, mainly to students and older people.
Thank you.
Miguel, good morning. Thank you for a great presentation. I'm just interested, you know, I've lived in a couple of different countries, and when you move around, as you have as well, and many of us have, you see how different countries have applied different models and how they've used their space, and how they've, like you mentioned, you know, particularly in Holland, they do that, where they have young students living in a community of older people, so that they have the opportunity of cheaper rents, but also of giving back as well. But one of the things, you know, obviously we're still in the middle of COVID. Do you think that there's the mindset within the Portuguese and the Irish governments and the planners of the future to look outside of their own countries and say, hold on a second, this is actually a moment where we can really improve and look to the future and not just do the same old thing over and over again, and learn from other countries and how they've adapted their spaces and how they've you know, look to the future in terms of viability, sustainability, and energy, and all the other, the climate, all the other key factors that influence us nowadays. Do you think that there's that mindset there? Because I think good intentions in the middle of a crisis can very often be lost once we've come out the other side.
Thank you for your comment, Sharon, and your question. I really think that it will come from the private sector, and then governments will have to adapt, because we will have to do business. We will have to attend to what people want in terms of what they need to consume. And so we will start slowly but steady by proposing new different projects, and I think then governments will have to follow that. I don't think that in Portugal we will see a proactive way of doing that, but I do see openness, and I do see that if and it's also our responsibility, who are stakeholders in this process, to reclaim that and say, look, what you are planning is not viable for what people want, and the way we plan our allotments and the way we think of our cities will have to include this type of solutions, because this is what people want, and this is when we finally have to convince everybody, for sure I am, that humans are the protagonists of real estate, and in the end of the day we are the users. So it's not going to be for the pleasantry of a certain architect to do a certain project that it's going to bring him a Pritzker prize, or that some kind of allotment will make some small portion of a community happy. It has to be a common effort to understand the purpose. We have to ask the purpose, what and why and to who are we building. And so I think the COVID will for sure, hopefully, reset our minds and kind of give us the opportunity to a new start. And I think that the authorities for sure will have to look at that. And I'm sure as well that we as private developers have a saying in that, in terms of also bringing those opportunities to the municipalities, to the governments, and making those projects in that same sense. So I'm not so optimistic saying that we will see that, because people have taken that consciousness, but I'm sure that within time, because this is what we have to change, this is what the purpose of what we have to build now will in the end influence governments and bring that change management culture into the governments and into the way we think cities, and hopefully we will have a better interior land occupation, and also our seaside will also be less and less of a second residence and coming more into a first residence opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to pick on this issue if I can. First of all, thank you, Miguel, for this fine presentation. This is a subject that I really like, changing on real estate. I have a couple of notes here that I take during the presentation, and one of them is actually the time that we need to change, because you know that in real estate, changes needs, I don't know, 20 years, maybe more. And one of the aspects is the public sector, because their answer is it's very slow. I think there is two scenarios that will come from this. First of all, if this pandemic is contained for this couple of months, and if you can start living more or less normal, I think change will be very slow. One of the things that definitely will change very fast is the connectivity. The people need to be linked differently that before of this. But I think if the pandemic is contained, the real estate sector will keep more or less in the same way that they were, and the public sector will behave more or less as they were until here. But if this pandemic will be longer, or if there is a different outcome in the future, a new pandemic, a new wave, whatever they call it, then I think the real estate will dramatically change, even though it will be difficult because of the public sector. Typically, the public sector doesn't think has a private sector. They don't want they cannot make money from the developers. They normally will go and trying to address the issues that the public are demanding. For instance, we are now preparing and making public areas for people to get together. But in the future, probably we don't want so many people. We need to be more private. So our gardens, they are now very big gardens for people to come in with their kids and play. They probably need to be smaller and in different areas. So this kind of change on the public sector, it will take very long time. And so this is something that I agree with Miguel. I think the private sector will be the first, because they will understand what the needs of the client, and they will develop probably outside of the city, because the people are looking for different places, and then the city hall will have to come and address these issues. And normally this will take, on a normal economy, more than 20 years. And this is the question. How long does the governments will take to answer this new need? The second issue that I was thinking about is the real estate itself, our apartments, the way we live. Miguel has a product that can be modeled to the needs of the people, but most of the developers don't have. And when we are thinking about co-living, and especially inside of Lisbon, in the center of Lisbon, we are thinking of massive amount of people living on the same place. Now, this is an issue. Of course, it's a possibility, but this is also an issue that has to be received. The other issue is the size of the spaces that we are buying, because at the time we need rooms to sleep in, some living spaces like a kitchen and a living room, and then we leave and we go to work. But now we need more than that. We need a place to work, and it has to be a good place, not just a small desk, how we are used to. Now we need more space because we have all our life here. And we need a place to have physical activity, because we need to be in shape. I know I'm not gaining weight since I'm home, but I do have time and space to have this physical activity. But people will need that. We also need to be more private for each other, because if you are living on a house and we are always bunking in somebody, our wife or our kids, and we need some private spaces. We need to be modular, of course. We need to have a room that it's an office, but we need to be changes. But most of all, we need to change our localization, because this is the first factor on real estate is local. And at the time we are always thinking, let's go to the center of the city so we can move to work as fast as we can. But now we can live 2 hours, 3 hours, even if we are working in a place that we need to go to the office. I believe in the future we probably will not need to go every day to the office. So the distance will be different. This brings issues on all kind of sectors, roads, the planning of the cities, garbage because people will be spread on the city. So water supplies, electric supplies. So this is a huge problem for the public sector. So it will take time to adjust. And I don't know if we have that time, actually. So, Michael, Miguel, what is your opinion on this?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and when we talk about time in that is, I understand when you say the public sector is really slow and it has been, I think more, I don't want to demonize it as well. There are good things, many good things in the public sector, and many good people and technicians. But in fact, it's true that we have the feeling, and it's less and less, I would say, but normally public sector takes more time to react to those needs. And I agree with you, it will be the private sector that will lead those changes. How fast are we going to change? Look how fast we change. In fact, in Portugal, we started to close companies, we started to close schools, even before the government did, because everybody saw that there was a need to do that. That was the right thing to do. And in fact, from one moment to the other, everybody was at home and everybody was adapting really, really fast to these new situations. So we will have to have that kind of response. It's not going to be tomorrow. It's not going to be the day after or in 2 years. But I think that if we really want to change, we have that capacity, and we've shown it just recently. So,
but the problem is more or less not us; it's the investors, because when we are working with the investors, they need a solid project plan. They need a financial goal in 3 or 4 years, not more than that. And but there is that 3 or 4 years, and as we are seeing now, the world changes very fast. So how they will react to this new idea, these new concepts that are not proved? How can you try to make investors come back and give us the money that we need to develop different projects in response to this pandemic?
Well, if we talk about specifically the Portuguese market, and for example, in 2019, we built 47,000 new homes, which is not a lot. If we compare back to 2008, where we were in 3 digits, just to give you an idea, for example, Spain was building 800,000 per year in 2008, and this in 2018. In 2019, it built around 120,000. So we are not looking at a problem of offer, as we saw before. There has been right now a demand shock, but that demand will come back. But it will come back different. It will come back with new needs. And so if investors and developers decide to do business as usual, I think then their clients will not show up, because people will be more demanding, because people will be the protagonist of what they would want to see in real estate. So probably what we are looking at is a change in paradigm, in saying we have to use different materials. We have to organize our teams in order to provide personalization, in order to provide services that we did not at this stage. Another thing that it's important is, again, the modularity. And when we talk about student housing or co-living, is that probably we will have to find spaces with the distances, of course, where actually people can, if they're in co-working, where they can actually develop their work outside of their apartment within the project. In student housing, we will have to find ways of doing spaces where in the morning they're used for yoga classes, and in the afternoon it's movie time. So it has to be the way we have within the same space. And now we have artificial intelligence, we have 3D technology that will help us to organize these buildings. And coming back to Christina's question, is that probably we will have to start by the existing buildings and how we can actually give them different uses and test these different uses in already existing buildings, and we can reform them. Rehabilitation of 19th, 18th century buildings in the old quarters of Lisbon and Oporto have brought a lot of life back into those cities, and some of them were adapted to the new lives, because the way they were built, those buildings, basically you don't really need air conditioning. There is no humidity because they have 50 centimeters, 60 centimeter thick walls. And nowadays, because we wanted to make more square meters out of what we can build, those walls are 30 centimeters. So, and now we put air conditioning equipment inside to do the same job that those walls used to do. So what we will have to, again, look at how we will use materials, and always in a viable way. This cannot just be a theoretical exercise. This has to be financially sound. This has to be, in fact, something that we can prove as a business. Otherwise, I agree with you, Pedro, investors will not come on board. The only thing that really makes me believe that they will, it's because the purpose of what we will be building is for clients, and we leave out of buyers. We don't just build buildings that people don't want to live in. So I'm sure that this new paradigm will come in slowly within the public sector, and the way we think of zoning more, probably again in a more flexible way, where we'll have to mix some uses so we actually make this viable in one point, and in another point, how we can actually bring the infrastructure towards within the city, because we will need more broadband, we will need more electricity generation alongside with environmental sustainability, and how we can actually then bring some of this into smart villages and make also those viable. Because, for example, in my case, if I think about here in Vilamoura, where we have all the infrastructures in terms of clinics, in terms of we have an international school, 650 people, students, but then if I go more towards the interior, I will not find that kind of school quality or even a school. So those will be the mixes that will have to come. And what I think is that people will probably be able to decide where they work from more, rather than now I'm going to work 9 to 5 from home. So probably they will work in the office, and offices as well will have to adapt. We've come from cubicles where everybody was in their own separated office into a 360 kind of office space where everybody interacts, open spaces, no one has offices, everybody dialogues. And we were seeing that that model was coming more and more towards a place where people were saying, this is too much in the middle. I need my own space. I need to have my own concentration area, a moment. I need some silence. And so also the offices were shifting from being an overly open office into having also some decompression areas, leisure areas where people can actually stay. So if we translate that into residential, this is the way it's going to come. So we will use that tripod. We will have the residential use, the leisure and the working part of it, but it will have to be in a flexible and modular way. And the way we organize internally our spaces will for sure be the big difference. And I'm sure that we will attract more clients before the competition when you do it.
Yeah, Miguel, just one more thing for those people that are not in real estate. Everything that we are talking about for the public sector, it will cost a huge amount of money. People probably won't aware of it, but the cost of this is brutal. So it will be, I think it will be a very long effort, and it will take time because of that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we will have to see, and I don't agree so much with you, is about large public spaces. I think again it goes in towards culture, but people will still have to go outside and cross strangers and see other people. That's the way we are. That's our human nature. But at the same time, it will give us distancing. If I look here in Vilamoura, I've seen some people that have come and stayed for the quarantine, and I see every day more and more people running in the cycle paths and walking and using those open green areas to their leisure moments. We are of course on confinement, but people leave for 1 hour and they come back, and that brings a lot of the sense of smoothing the way we're going through the quarantine in one point, but at the same time, it brings also some mental sanity in what we're all living. And so even when we're not in confinement, people will still need to be in places that are public. People will still need to be living within green areas and squares and all of that. Again, maybe we will have to live with it, and maybe we'll have to use masks, and maybe that's the recommendation. But our human nature, in its essence, has not changed and will not change. And probably what we are looking here now is exactly saying that. It's time for us. It's time for the humans. And we actually see that the planet, because we did this massive stop of airplanes and pollution and all of that, where we see some animals coming into the urban areas and all of that. This reset probably was something important to make us aware that we can do things differently. We can change, because we did. We just proven ourselves that we could do that. So, and again, I think if we translate that into business, into euros or dollars, which in the end of the day, it has to come that way. I'm sure that if we don't look at the purpose of things, then we will not be as competitive as others, because then that's when we will have the clients.
Yeah, I don't know if there is any more questions. I just wanted to ask you just one maybe last question. Is more about the situation now and in the next and this year, you know. Obviously now it's a little bit difficult. I don't know how you've seen if you know people who said they would go ahead have now postponed or are thinking about it, and what do you think will happen in the next 3 to 6 months in 2020? Are we looking in the real estate in Portugal and in the Algarve more particularly in a kind of V-shaped recovery, or do you think it will take longer? And also, will this you know situation, this COVID-19, will it have an impact on the price of the houses in the short term?
There's the $1 million question I was waiting to have. Look, let's look. We can real estate, as Pedro rightly was saying, is a long-term cycle. We cannot decide in specific moments. So we cannot decide during hell, and we cannot decide when we're in the fridge, because in fact, we're looking at long cycles of normally 7-8 years. We were having already a long cycle since the last 2008 crisis. And again, that crisis back then was because there was too much offer in the market. There was a systemic financial problem within banks. So nowadays, either developers, banks, everybody is much more sound financially. So we're not looking at a problem of offer. We're looking at a problem of demand. But what we will see is that demand will come, because it has been frozen. The way it will come is, it depends really if this stays, how long this crisis will last. if it's going to be starting the small openings during the month of May, and then it comes during June, and we don't have second waves and all of that, then gradually people will come back. Again, there is not an oversupply in the market, and because there is not an oversupply in the market, there shouldn't be many reasons why, and I'm talking about companies, I'm not talking about private owners. There shouldn't be many reasons why people should lower their prices, because it just, the fundamentals did not change. And again, maybe they cannot even, because they bought land at a higher price. They have a commitment in terms of building materials, construction costs. So I don't foresee that we will have a huge discount in terms of prices from developers. Maybe we will see some fright from private owners that's due to the circumstances decide to sell their second home, or they decide to sell their second apartment they had for investment. But I will not foresee that in the near future. And again, that this is a little bit on, there's a caveat on saying this is a little bit on futurology, and it depends on how people will behave. But from our perspective, and we do not plan on moving prices, we have plans of doing further launches, in fact. From that perspective, I don't think the market will be for the new developments, for the new residencies on the market. I don't see that there will be an erosion of price in the near future. It again also depends on how people will behave, but what we're seeing right now is that we are seeing Vilamoura as a great destination for first residents, and I've been getting contacts from many brokers saying it's starting to pick up again. And curiously, and it's something that they didn't have before, is that most of the people are actually, I want to come and live. And this is why it's very important, and again, talking a little bit on the public sector, on how we keep the policies of attracting international investment, the golden visas as well, because this is what brought Portugal out of it back in 2015, 14, and foreign investment is very important, making a climate of easiness of investing, keeping those programs, giving legal security that when you start something, it's what you're going to have until the end. So this is something that will bring for sure the opportunity of having those international investors. Also, it is important to say that so far Portugal has a good perception the way we've been dealing with this crisis. So I do think so that we will have people coming in because now they see that they can live in, for example, Vilamoura, and being 2 hours away from Lisbon, 20 minutes from the airport, and still have a family life, still have all the infrastructures, school, sports, and all of that. But also, we understand that with travel restrictions being more expensive to travel, people probably will stay longer. Maybe instead of coming for a week of golf, I just stay for a week of golf and 3 months of working, and then I go back. So it will really depend on the way people will behave, but I think that we have many positive angles that we see from Vilamoura in terms of how we will the real estate work will come. It will bring us a big effort on our side because I'm sure that we will have many low offers of people, opportunistic people that want to come and buy. But for sure, we will always listen to those offers and stick to our prices.
Miguel, you believe this is really an opportunity for Vilamoura?
I think it's an opportunity for Vilamoura, and because we now have living this seasonality. How do we deal with this seasonality? And we have mainly golf during September towards April, high season, and then we would start to have the beach season. And what we were already doing is that we were diversifying sectors. Also, the municipality is installing here a senior active living facility, looking to the now everybody what we call the senior living, where people have a longer age living index, and that they're sane and they can develop all of their activities here in terms of infrastructure being on the outside. And one of the things that's very important regarding Vilamoura is that in terms of market, is that Vilamoura is about location. Vilamoura is in central Algarve, is 1 hour and 45 minutes from Seville, 20 minutes from the airport, and it's already a consolidated destination. So when you buy real estate, and about what we were talking before, we were always concerned about three main aspects, which were location, location, and location. And so Vilamoura has the opportunity to offer location, but also to offer residential space, leisure opportunities, and of course, remote working. So I think in the end of the day, we have a great opportunity to make Vilamoura more and more a place to live, to invest. It's a choice of lifestyle that I think that people will react and come to us.
Okay. Anybody else?
I would like,
No?
Miguel.
Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm really related with this subject as an architect, and there's something I was really passionate on university was about the Japanese architecture. That they, on a really small place, they put all that they need inside in different walls. You just have your office, then you have your bed, then you have your kitchen. And now I hope some investors think about it, of course, not on big lands or places we have space, but mostly on the big cities like Lisbon and Porto, that you have to transform small areas in a place that you can survive to a quarantine or to another problem. So I think it's going to be a challenge, and I hope some investors see that as a good opportunity. I love Tadoando, that is one of the main architects that implement that. And also the Japanese architecture will be a great example. And I have the same view of you in the real estate, because this is the place where we have to have the best solutions to the market, because people will look for different things. So congratulations for your presentation, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Susanna. And I think the architects will have a very important word in that, because they will have actually to deliver projects that will bring solutions to people. And so, and at the same time, with a challenge on cost-effective material use, so that those new projects are also financially viable. So thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it now. Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Miguel. That was really great presentation. Really enjoyed it, and thank you for everybody to have attended and contributed to this webinar. So as usual, I will share the presentation, and we have recorded the seminar, the webinar. So I'll put that on our YouTube channel as well, so you can look at that and share it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Arnold, and of course within the Irish Portuguese community, we are and myself are available if you would like to discuss, talk, and knowing anything more. Of course, this is what these networks are for. So let's use them, and let's discuss more, because certainly from the discussion of ideas is where we get is where we evolve as humans as well. So thank you for listening and for your time.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks
Thank you.
very
Bye-bye.
much, everybody. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Have a nice day too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Bye.